The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Barham Salih, President of the Republic of Iraq. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Barham Salih, President of the Republic of Iraq, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of God, the Merciful, the Compassionate, Mr. President, we would like to congratulate you on your election to lead the General Assembly, and we wish you every success in your work. Your Majesties, Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, may the peace of God be with you. I speak to you today as a representative of my country, Iraq, a founding nation of the United Nations, and on behalf of my people, the roots of which go back to the mists of time, to the civilizations of Ur and Babel, and the Sumerian and Assyrian civilizations, noble civilizations which have been part of the history of humanity. We meet here today as we are still facing the health crisis imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic, violence and terrorism, without forgetting the issue of sustainable development and climate change. These issues, dangerous issues, require serious solutions. These challenges underscore once again the central role of the United Nations and of international organizations in the coordination of different positions in order to address these challenges. It is time to address these dangers together. Our meeting this year is an opportunity to cooperate and to agree on a roadmap for the future. In Iraq, the government has taken a series of necessary health measures to control the pandemic, and that despite a medical infrastructure that is limited and which has suffered from repeated destruction during the wars that have torn the country apart in the past. We've thus been able to strengthen the capacity of state institutions in the provision of treatments and prevention. Iraq was one of the first countries to join the COVAX initiative to ensure vaccines for our citizens and for foreign residents. At this time, I'd like to express the appreciation of my government and our people for the international organizations, and particularly the WHO. We'd like to thank them for all of the support provided to Iraq during this pandemic. Mr. President, honorable delegates, over the last 40 years alone, Iraq has suffered from wars, embargoes, tyranny, genocidal campaigns, we've known mass graves, the use of chemical weapons in Jalaba, the draining of the marshes, and the grip of terrorism over our cities. We have been able to overcome these tragedies and liberate our cities from the evil forces of Daesh, thus saving the world from their atrocious crimes thanks to the courage of our army and of our police, but also thanks to popular mobilization, the Peshmerga and the International Alliance. Let's not forget the support provided by our neighbors and friends, and also the great role played by the religious authority of Najaf al-Ashraf in mobilizing people to face this existential threat. Our forces acted with determination to stamp out the remaining terrorist cells which threaten the security of Iraq and the region and the world. We cannot understate the danger posed by terrorism. If we become lax and distracted by regional conflicts, we will simply see the return of obscurantist forces that will threaten our peoples and our security. Cooperation and solidarity are our only choice in our fight against international terrorism and the groups which support it. We have to fight against its funding, deal with its dangerous effects, and provide reparation to its victims, ensuring that these tragic sufferings are not repeated. Our obligation today is to rebuild the cities that have been liberated and ensure that those displaced can return home. We've made great progress, and we hope to benefit from the support of the international community in the rebuilding of our regions that have been freed from the yoke of terrorism. We must respond to the urgent humanitarian needs and promote the capacity for rebuilding the infrastructure in the country so that our citizens will be able to once again find a dignified and normal life. In this context, I'd like to underscore the adoption by Iraq of the law on Yazidi survivors in order to ensure justice for this category of individuals which has suffered the worst kinds of oppression and exploitation at the hands of Daesh. The law also covers women from other societal groups. Ladies and gentlemen, the phenomenon of corruption also threatens the security and stability of the whole world. Corruption in our country is facing corruption because of the heavy burden left behind by wars and conflicts that have squandered a huge part of the resources of the country, thus depriving Iraqis of the riches of their land. The fight against corruption, therefore, for Iraq is a genuine national battle. The situation of the country will not normalize unless we manage to beat corruption. This fight means we must limit the sources of corruption and block their various forms of access. We must ensure that funds are restored that have been plundered or trafficked, a great part of which are used to perpetuate violence and chaos in the country. We have no other choice than that of victory. Based on this commitment to fight corruption, Iraq joined the United Nations Convention Against Corruption in 2000, as well as the Convention of the League of Arab States Against Corruption in 2010. We are also working on a draft law for the recovery of plundered assets, and the government has organized a conference aimed at coordinating efforts to achieve this goal. I would like to issue a call to our friends in the international community to help us to find again and restore the money that has been plundered from Iraq due to corruption. This will be a decisive step in deterring corruption. We renew our call for an international alliance to be formed to fight against corruption and to restore pillaged goods, similar to the International Alliance Against Terrorism. We cannot eliminate terrorism unless we eliminate corruption, which itself constitutes a political economy of violence and terrorism. Corruption and terrorism, in fact, are linked and are mutually reinforcing and work steadfastly in tandem. Mr. President, honourable delegates, our planet is facing an existential danger due to extreme climate change, which is threatening future generations. We may have different political views, but we must remain united in fighting climate change. This is a danger which threatens everyone. Our country, Iraq, is going through difficult times. The climate conditions are very harsh. Desertification and the scarcity of water resources places the country in 5th place amongst the weakest countries with regard to climate change, according to the 6th report of environmental forecasts for the Western Asian region. Iraq has joined the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in 1992, as well as the Paris Convention of 2015. And we are working towards the adoption of a strategy aimed at preserving the environment and achieving the SDGs by 2030. A document of national contributions has been drafted to guide our economic transformation and promote the concept of a green economy in order to attract new investment to Iraq and to ensure greater participation of the private sector in this fight against climate change. We must resuscitate the valley between the two rivers, this region which previously was known as the Black Land because of its dense vegetation, a paradise of Eden, a green area, an area of fertility. Iraq, because of its geographic place in the heart of the region and because of its diversified environment where we have palm trees, marshes and the mountains of Kurdistan, can be an environmental meeting point for the countries of the Middle East. This requires international support in all areas in order to assist Iraq in its efforts to implement these national and political strategies. The climate crisis does not spare any country. Adaptation to its disastrous and harmful effects and reducing them cannot be done through individual measures. A country which believes that its measures are able to protect it from the dangers of the climate will see those efforts reduced to naught if its neighbour or its region or the world does not adopt similar measures. The sandstorms, the scarcity of water, the increase in the temperatures and desertification are cross-border dangers which will not be solved unless there is coordination and planning at the international level and at a high level, combining together national, regional and international plans. Ladies and gentlemen, Iraq sits at the heart of the Middle East region, a region that has suffered and still is suffering from wars and conflicts that are the result of the breakdown of security and political systems over at least the last 40 years. The absence of Iraq and its natural role on the regional scene was one of the reasons for destabilization in the area. This is why Iraq has adopted a balanced policy based on dialogue and the reduction of tensions, concentrating on areas of common agreement. We underscore the need to create a new organization based on cooperation and the economic links that exist between the countries of the region with the participation of the international community, an organization that is able to respond to common challenges, be that terrorism, extremism, unstable economic conditions, the inability to provide work opportunities to an ever greater number of young people, but also the dangerous effects of climate change. The Iraqi government has therefore organized the Baghdad Conference for Cooperation and Partnership in order to underscore that Iraq, which was a synonym for conflict, is now a meeting point for the interests of the peoples and states of the region. The success of peace efforts cannot be seen without Iraq, an Iraq that is safe, stable and fully sovereign, and whose crucial role in the region will be re-established. This requires regional and international support, as well as a stop to competitive behaviour and the conflicts of others being played out on our land. We also note that the ongoing Syrian crisis and its humanitarian tragic effects on the Syrian people is unacceptable. We would recall that dangerous pockets of terrorism are being woken up on an ongoing basis and feed on this state of affairs, thus threatening our country and the entire region. It's high time that we work together earnestly to put an end to the suffering of the Syrian people, respecting their right to peace and freedom, and by eliminating these pockets of terrorism active in the country. Iraq, ladies and gentlemen, repeats its position with regard to the need to arrive at a global and fair solution to the Palestinian question. There can be no lasting peace in the region without guaranteeing the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people for an independent state. The ongoing war in Yemen and its security and human repercussions are also a source of concern and require a solution that will guarantee security and peace for its citizens and the countries of the region. Mr. President, honourable delegates, next month Iraq will be facing a key national event, namely the holding of early elections. As a response to a popular movement and a national consensus, a very large-scale consensus on the need to bring about crucial reforms and to establish a new contract or social and political pact that will correct the failings of the previous system and ensure good governance. These elections will be decisive and will have an effect on Iraq and perhaps the entire region. These elections are being held at a time when our people are commemorating the walk to Karbala al-Hussein, peace be upon him, and we reaffirm our attachment to the most beautiful and noble human values, be they that reform, peace, the refusal of injustice or oppression, and the right to lead a dignified life. Iraqis are sure that they have an iron will to preserve the nation and fight to ensure reform, fight corruption, and live a free and dignified life. In order to achieve these noble goals, it is essential that we restore the trust of Iraqis in the elections and ensure their broad participation. This is a priority for us. A new electoral law has been adopted, a law which is more just and more representative compared to the last law, as well as a new electoral commission, the funding of which has been covered by the government in order to ensure a good organisation of the elections. Moreover, a new electoral code of conduct has been adopted to guarantee the success of the elections so that they can pave the way for peaceful reforms through a parliament and a government that genuinely respect the voice of the people without manoeuvres or manipulations. Indeed, one of the causes for political tensions relates to the flaws and the lack of popular trust in the previous electoral processes. In this context, I would like to thank the countries that have contributed to the adoption of Resolution 2576 of the Security Council relating to the electoral process in Iraq. We would like to thank the Secretariat of the United Nations and the European Union for their role in sending international observers tasked with ensuring transparency. We finally would like to thank the United Nations mission in Iraq for all of its efforts and its electoral support. Dear friends, Iraq has been an example of diversity and of profound coexistence throughout its history. Our people draws strength from this diversity and this genuine coexistence. The people respect this diversity as part of our culture. The next passage is being read out in an unofficial UN language, therefore cannot be interpreted. I would like to conclude my statement, ladies and gentlemen, by reaffirming that we are partners on this planet. Partners because of our aspirations and because of our fears and because of our human values. We have a great need for solidarity in order to put an end to the degradation of the environment and to avoid wars and conflicts. Responding to The environmental challenges is the greatest gift that we can give to future generations. I thank you, Mr. President, and may the peace of the Most High be with you all. Thank you.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Iraq for the statement just made. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. We have heard the last speaker in the general debate for this meeting. The 11th plenary meeting to continue with the general debate will begin at 3 p.m. sharp. The meeting stands adjourned.